Hey there, study fans, it's Camus, and I'm back with another edition of Chess Beauty, number 90 in this case. At the end of Chess Beauty 89, we were left with this puzzling position, so it's white to play and win. So if you haven't seen it before, give it a shot. Alright, I'm assuming that you've cracked this baby. So let's see, for those of you who haven't, what's going on in this position? Well, white seems to be in some trouble. Although he has an extra piece, there's approximately material parity due to the extra pawns that black has. Black has a lot of threats in this position. The f pawn is under threat. He's threatening rook takes h2 check, as well as threatening the bishop on a4. In addition to that, white's king position looks pretty insecure. If white doesn't find the correct solution, he's going to be in some trouble. An incorrect try at a solution would be the obvious looking rook takes g3 check, rook takes g3, f takes g3, and then rook takes a4. And black actually has two pawns in this position. There is no white win. So back to the start. What about bishop to c2? Seems a logical choice. He can just take rook takes c2, rook takes c2, g2 check, exclam, king takes g2, and that was a discovered attack on our rook, so we're not winning there either. What about f takes g3? F takes g3, rook h takes h2, king to g1, rook a to g2 check, king to f1, bishop to f2, bishop takes f2, rook takes f2 check, king to e1, rook to e2 check, king to d1, rook to a2. And now rook to c2, mate is threatened here, rook to a1 check, rook to c1, only move. Now rook h1 check, king to e2, and rook a takes c1. And black, it looks more likely to win this position than white. Finally, let's try bishop to e8, trying to drum up some counterplay. Well, that's met by rook takes h2 check, king to g1, bishop takes f2 check, bishop takes f2, rook a1 check, and unfortunately, there is no escape for white here. He can only throw wood in the way. Rook c1, rook takes c1, rook to d1, rook takes d1, bishop to e1, rook takes e1, checkmate. Almost by a process of elimination do we arrive at the correct solution, which is king to g2. And here, the black rook on h3 is threatened, so black has to certainly worry about that. Now he has a couple of bad tries, as white did in the last move. Let's take a look. So black can try rook takes f2 check, and what he's hoping for is the ghastly mistake, king takes h3, which is met by rook takes h2 checkmate. Very nice. But instead of that, white just plays bishop takes f2, rook takes h2 check, king takes g3, rook takes f2, and king to h3, and this is just winning because we're an extra rook in the position. Back to the position after king to g2. He has rook takes a4, just snatching off the bishop. Again, he's hoping for king takes h3, but this does not work out so well because of g takes f2. Say we do rook to g3 check, rook to g4, rook to f3, got to stop that pawn. But after the very clever move, rook to h4 check, king takes h4, f1, promoting to a queen, is a discovered check, and black wins the game. Very nice variation there. Again, back to the position after king to g2. And finally we have rook to h4, trying to rescue the rook. But this doesn't work because of rook takes g3 check, rook to g4, bishop to e8, and white is just going to win with the extra material. So again, virtually by a process of elimination, we arrive at black's only real good try after king to g2, and that's rook takes h2 check. Naturally, king to g3 is the only move worth considering. And now black has a number of tries here. He can try rook h takes f2, bishop takes f2, bishop takes f2, king to f3, rook takes a4, king takes f2, but we seem to have an extra rook in that position. So after king to g3, he can also try rook to h1, rescuing his rook again. But then the clever move, bishop to b3, attacks rook on a1. And if he tries rook to a1 here, for instance, then bishop takes f7 check, king to f5, rook to c5 check, king to e4, rook to e3 check, king to d4, rook takes h5, and that is a discovered checkmate. So after king to g3, again rook to h1, bishop to b3. Instead of rook to a1 that we just looked at, you can go rook to e2. Seems plausible. But again, bishop takes f7 check, king to g5, rook to c5 check, rook to e5, rook takes e5, f takes e5, rook to f3, hemming in that black king, h4 check, king to g2, and that's very winning for us. We have a lot of extra material in that position. Going back to the position after king takes g3, rook to h1, bishop to b3, rook to d2 is another try we haven't looked at. But this is met by bishop takes f7, and it doesn't matter whether he goes to g5 or f5. Let's say f5, the result will be the same. King to f5, rook to c5 check, king to e4, rook to e3 check, king to d4, rook takes h5, a very picturesque mate. Alright, so returning to the main line, after king takes g3, we've seen that none of the tries we just looked at work. So the best try for black seems to be bishop takes f2 check. And now king takes h2. And now the move that black thought would save him, bishop takes b6, discovered check. And you can see that white's rook on c7 looks to be a goner as a result of this move, but white has a very clever reply. So if you haven't found the solution before now, now's a good time to try and work out the last few moves of this game. It's not that difficult at this point. Alright, I was assuming that if you were white, you didn't play rook to c2, seemingly rescuing the rook, because after rook takes a4, we don't really have enough of a material plus to win the game here. The position is considered a little better for black according to the computer engine. So instead, after bishop takes b6, discovered check, the winning move is the somewhat startling bishop to c2, which seems to be abandoning our rook on c7. Black plays bishop takes c7 check. Seems very bad for us, but we block with the rook. Rook to g3. We block the check and uncover a check from the bishop on c2, so it's discovered double check, and that's checkmate. So despite the fact that white's two pieces on the board are pinned by enemy pieces, we have a checkmate of the black position. So it was actually worth it to get through all those variations to see this final picture. And this is why it won third honorable mention in the humor tourney that we talked about. As to the authors of this study, it's difficult to find material on more recent authors. Emil Vlasak is a chess computer programmer, and he's written several articles. If you search his name online, you can find an interesting website where he has links to all sorts of things that he's doing in connection to chess and computer programming. The other composer, Hlinka, was not able to find really any kind of information other than the fact that he seems to have been an active player in the 90s. His rating is in the expert level, which indicates to me that you don't have to be a chess playing genius to come up with genius endgame studies. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll look forward to our next position. This is white to play and win. I'll give you something of a hint. This is also from the humor tournament. So look for a humorous element, and that might help you solve it. I didn't even come close to solving it, but perhaps you'll do better than I did. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next Chess Beauty.